Records that were just revealed show that for years, banks around the world have helped divert and conceal criminal funds. Now, documents leaked from the U.S. Treasury Department appear to show how banks helped to circumvent international sanctions, including against Iran and Syria. Danish and British banks, as well as Germany's Deutsche Bank, are among those implicated in leaked files.
All over the world, criminals are using the global financial system to launder money. It's a dirty but lucrative business for the banks. If a bank notices a suspicious transfer, it has to report it to the authorities. Thousands of such reports were obtained by BuzzFeed News and then evaluated by the ICIJ. It's an international network of investigative journalists. They've discovered evidence of money laundering worth $2 trillion. You can earn a lot by handling money from criminal sources. That's why it's hard for banks to say no to criminal money. In Germany, Deutsche Bank has some explaining to do. The country's largest bank already had to pay millions in fines in 2017 after dodgy dealings in Russia. The investigation reveals that those illegal activities are much more extensive than previously thought. Russian criminals used Deutsche Bank's Moscow branch to launder millions. The current CEO, Christian Sewing, served as head of corporate auditing at the time. He did not raise the alarm, but subsequent external investigations did. Deutsche Bank says it has since toughened its internal controls, and it denies that CEO Sewing did anything wrong. It says he was unaware of the external probe. He founded a unit that led these investigations. There've since been external investigations too, and at no stage could any responsibility be traced back to the head of the business. The investigation also shows that US President Donald Trump may have profited from dirty money. Oligarchs from Kazakhstan allegedly bought apartments at a Trump New York property with laundered money. Trump's company denies knowing who these customers were, but they did make money from the transactions. The investigation shows the scale of international money laundering. Efforts to curb it are floundering, because regulators can't get to grips with highly sophisticated criminal networks.
And we have team coverage of this story. We're joined by DW business reporter Arthur Sullivan here in the studio. And we also have joining us from Frankfurt, Chelsea Delaney. Welcome to both of you. Arthur, I'd like to begin with you. The scale of this, it seems enormous. What does it say about the financial system? Yeah, the scale is enormous, Sarah. So as the report just mentioned, $2 trillion worth of transactions are covered by these 18 years, which detail various financial transactions involving some of the world's largest banks. 400 journalists, 16 months of extensive research has gone into all this. What it says about the financial system is really a lot of things. So in some respects, some of this is not a shock. We know that banks have, to some extent, facilitated money laundering. They've allowed transactions to happen for years, and many of them have been investigated to that. What this shows us, though, is the extent to which that has happened. A huge extent, $2 trillion worth, as I've said. Now, two big questions emerge from this, really. I mean, several questions will emerge in the next few days, but for me at the moment, two big ones emerge. It's important to remember that the banks themselves have reported this information. The leak comes from US authorities, which the banks provided suspicious activity reports to. But the question is, if banks are wondering about these suspicious reports, if they see a transaction that they think is suspect, why did they allow it to happen? Why are they able to receive money from that transaction, in some instances a lot of money? And why have authorities not done more to stop it? If they know that this is happening, why is it continuing to happen? That's the big question. Those are some really big questions. And Chelsea, I'd like to turn to you, and perhaps we can dig down into one of the examples, because reportedly 60% of these leaked transactions came from Deutsche Bank. You're standing by close to their headquarters there in Frankfurt. Just walk us through Deutsche's role.
So Deutsche Bank is definitely finding itself at the center of this scandal. We don't know exactly if this portion of leaked documents is really representative of all of the suspicious activity reports reported to the Treasury, or if these actually lead to criminal activity. But being involved in 60% is certainly not a good look for Deutsche Bank, especially after its history in the past several years of being embroiled in so many financial scandals. But what this data really shows is that Deutsche Bank has had a very lax system of controls, even the most basic controls, things like knowing who your customers are, so knowing who you're dealing with, having their addresses, having their names. They really didn't have that for a lot of their clients, especially in regards to business that was happening in their Moscow office. So that's definitely a big concern. And as well, they also had a lot of reports of this elevated to the highest levels. So executives at board, their board had reports of these very lax anti-money laundering controls, and they didn't really take action. Deutsche Bank is saying that they have fixed a lot of this, they've invested a lot of money, and they're now a new bank, but it certainly raises a lot of questions.
Certainly. How about, on the part of regulators? I mean, how could this continue for so long?
It also, of course, really points the finger at regulators. The banks themselves obviously have a lot of work to do, but since the financial crisis, regulators have taken a lot of action to really get banks to clean up their act, and it's clearly not working because many banks have been fined for activity related to money laundering, and they just continue to repeat the same actions over and over again. So clearly, the fines that they're handing down are not really deterring this kind of behavior. So, one discussion today is really, should there be stronger penalties for failing on money laundering grounds? Should there be arrest? Should there be criminal prosecution? Because the fines and sort of the demands that banks stop doing this are clearly not successful now in preventing this kind of behavior.
Chelsea Delaney with The View from Frankfurt, Arthur Sullivan here in the studio. Thank you so much to both of you.